nation. We stand with Aboriginal Australians to protect their rights. We are not going to fall for the racist scapegoating of asylum seekers. We are Australians and we are better than that. We are not going to abandon the sick. We are not going to allow a co-payment and the attack on the principle of universal health care. We support welfare because welfare supports everyone. We are here because the Australia that we are the community of is a country of care, of support, of generosity, of welcome. We are a country of refuge. But let's be very aware, this is not a budget for Australia. This is a budget for a very small percentage of very rich people. This is a budget for those most privileged in corporate Australia. It is a budget for those who fund the Liberal Party.
Are we going to accept this rotten budget?
No!
Are we going to let Tony Abbott wreck our country?
No!
Are we going to get rid of this government at the earliest opportunity? Friends, we know the enemy and we know what he's prepared to do. We know Tony Abbott would have said anything and done anything to get into power.
And he did.
Promised anything, opposed anything, torn down anything. Not to create and not to build a better Australia, but to get his hands on the sledgehammer to start wrecking and destroying everything generations of working people have built. Everything that's made Australia a fairer, a kinder, or more equal place than the United States. Friends, I've been tracking Tony Abbott's wreckage, and in only 8 months, he's hurt Australians and wrecked the country in a shocking 226 different ways, and he's broken a staggering 27 promises. In only 8 months, this is the future young people can expect under an Abbott government. A future without dignity, a future without hope, a future without opportunity, and friends, a future without a future. Tony Abbott and his government are driven by one thing, and that's to wreck everything that generations of working people have built. Medicare, the PBS, university education, the welfare safety net, the retirement age, Gonski, the NBN, and our union movement. And this is all before he starts on our rights at work, the minimum wage and penalty rates. Tony Abbott holds in contempt everything generations of working people have built, everything that represents fairness, aims for equality, or checks the power of big business. But it's Abbott's contempt for us, his contempt, that's his fatal weakness. He underestimates us, and that will be his downfall. Tony Abbott is deluded. He believes because of the cheers of the Murdoch press, the fawning admiration of Gina Reinhardt, and the unswerving support of big business, that he will get away with his disastrous agenda. Now, friends, will we let him get away with it?
Greenpeace is independent from every government around the world, from every political party. We take no donations from business. We are entirely independent. But we are outraged at this government. And we are outraged at this government because we are seeing a ferocity and speed of attacks on the hard-won protections for our environment. My friends, think about what people power has accomplished in Australia's long history. It is because of the power and determination of the Australian people that the Great Barrier Reef was not drilled for oil in the 1970s. It is because because of the power and determination of the Australian people that the Franklin was not damned. It is, my friends, because of the power and determination of the Australian people just this week that up at Bentley we saw the full might of the coal seam gas industry stopped in its tracks because of the power and determination of the Australian people.
$534 million from Aboriginal programs. We are the poorest group of people in this country, and after 226 years of occupation, we have been left with the most problems. Now, what I have to say to that is this government will and has already got blood on its hands. You strip that much money out of Aboriginal affairs, deaths will occur. This intervention was only put in for one reason. It's the biggest land grab since 1788, and it is operating on behalf of the mining companies. Now, what do we have to follow that? $500 million taken out of Aboriginal affairs with a blink of an eye. $500 million. Do you imagine how many programs we're going to lose out of that? You look at just legal services alone. We have the second highest incarceration rate in the world. We have one of the highest deaths in custody rates in the world. When we strip these fundings off, our preventative programs will go. That will mean there'll be more people incarcerated. That will mean there'll be more deaths in custody. As far as I'm concerned, this is murder at government hands. And I will not shy away from that. Abbott, if you have your media people out there, take my photo, I don't care. ASIO, if you're out there, take my photo, I don't care. This government has done enough to our people. I don't care anymore what you do. I'm willing to fight you until I'm old and grey, and our brothers and sisters will follow us.
I wanted to talk to you today about something that hasn't been said, and that is the fact that we have a corporatised government. Not just this government, the last government, the government before that, and the government before that. This did not start in September 2013. The budget last week was a disgrace, which we'll get to in a minute, but let's not forget the issues that the Liberal government has brought in started in many ways long before the last election. They started because the Labor Party and many of its supporters in the press were happy to accept those policies. What we have now is a matter of nuance and extremism. Privatisation, outsourcing was done by Labor and the Liberal Party for years on a range of issues. Immigration, Indigenous affairs, transport, education, health, childcare, defence. This did not start last week. It did not start in September last year. And Abbott and Hockey and their cigar-smoking friends in the Murdoch press, and hello if they're here, hello boys and girls. They did this because Labor, in my view and many people's view, laid the ground. They believe in the very similar values. This is not simply if the Labor Party came in tomorrow, the problems are solved. Do not forget what happened on a lot of these issues in the last 6 years. Immigration as one key example. Manus Island and Nauru was not opened by the Liberal Party. It was reopened by Labor. Let's not forget that. So what I would say to you all is, do not be fooled. Do not be fooled by the sweet sounds of Bill Shorten, who spoke last week about his dedication to the working people. One of the things that this government, and dare I say the last government, talk about is the wonderful examples from the US and the UK. We should follow their leads. Now, anyone who's spent any time looking at the reality in the US and the UK in terms of equality and inequality will find that's exactly the opposite of what we want. This didn't start in September last year. In the last years, Howard government, Labor government, now the Abbott government again, have outsourced and privatised all immigration attention to various companies, Transfield, G4S, Serco and others. This is a bipartisan belief. The human rights abuses we're seeing in these countries, and the budget last week talked about, let's face it, giving more money to offshore detention, is a problem we have to tackle, which is not coming just from a Liberal Party. This is bipartisan. And that's why the idea somehow of accepting and hoping that's going to change requires action. Some people will be aware that this year the Biennale, the wonderful arts event that occurs, there was a massive campaign by artists who were opposed to the fact that the Biennale was happy to take money from Transfield, a corporation that was supporting, funding and receiving money, our tax money, on Manus and Nauru. A $1.2 billion contract went to Transfield this year to run both those centres. And the Biennale was forced, out of public pressure and otherwise, to rescind that money. That, ladies and gentlemen, is an example of people power, and we should celebrate it.
Tony Abbott talks about the budget bottom line. He says that the budget he's introduced is about fixing the budget bottom line. But Tony Abbott has put $7.2 billion aside for offshore processing. If he wants to fix the bottom line, close Nauru, close Manus Island, close the Australian detention centres. There are billions of dollars that can go into universities, that can go into hospitals, that can go into schools. But Tony Abbott has got something like 5,000, 6,000 people still in detention. And you know, one of the tragedies is that almost half, 2,400 of those people are children in detention in Christmas Island and detention centres around Australia. That's the compassionate face of Tony Abbott. We stand here almost 2 months to the day since Reza Barati was brutally killed on Manus Island. We stand here 2 months to the day still waiting for justice for Reza Barati. 2 months on, and there still is no inquiry. 2 months on, no independent inquiry. 2 months on, the killers of Reza Barati still roam free on Manus Island, employed by Transfield with the approval of Tony Abbott and Scott Morrison. The bloody hands of Scott Morrison are still stained with the blood of Reza Barati, and there is that stain will not come off until Manus Island is closed. We're not here just to replace Tony Abbott with Bill Shorten. We have got a very, very strong message for the Labor Party. That a Labor Party which is committed to pensions and is committed to Medicare, but is not committed to closing offshore processing, is not committed to freeing the refugees, is a Labor Party that is not worth having. We do think about the asylum seekers. We understand that the stopping the boats has got everything to do with making a distraction and nothing to do with any fundamental threat to Australia. The threat to Australia doesn't come from asylum boats, it comes from Canberra. But we march today for justice for Reza Barati. We march to bring down the Abbott government and to bring down the fences of Manus Island and Nauru.
An Abbott-proof fence now. All of us, put your hands together and let's march as one and bring this government down today. Rebellion is the right of all people. We have a right to rise up against unjust laws. It's called civil disobedience. Let's see it in action.